Get out the insurance cards, get out the co-pays. The office is open, my friends. Brought to you by drrodo.com.
It's time once again for everybody to come aboard that Green Screens Media train. This is One and Done, your fast break for all things college basketball. On tonight's show, we're going to bring you our interview with BYU Cougars head coach Mark Pope. We're going to give you 5 new portal entrants inside our top 300, and we're going to debut yet another new segment where I'm going to ask the guys some questions about the overall landscape of the transfer portal, and they're going to give me their rapid-fire responses to each. I am the conductor of the aforementioned Green Screens Media train. My name is Jay Heinrich. You can follow me on Twitter at Dr. William Cannon. I'm going to go tonight to the captain of the Green Screens Media ship, El Capitan himself. You can follow him on Twitter at MCHolland34. He is the OG Money Mike Holland. What it do, baby?
I am feeling great and rested. The portal is closing. It is May 11th. Oh, man, what a ride it's been since the national championship game. The portal frenzy has been absolutely madness. Now, just because the portal deadline is today, there's still going to be some guys trickling in, obviously paperwork, grad transfers. They can just jump in at any time. So we're still going to have some names out there. But what another crazy portal, 1,700 plus guys in Division I. And we're going to drop a final list on drrodo.com, our top 300 transfer board on Monday the 15th. So be on the lookout for that on drrodo.com. And just appreciate everyone following us throughout the madness. It shouldn't just be March Madness. It should be April Madness and early May Madness, and basically just madness all year long.
No doubt about it. And don't forget, you can find that at drrodo.com for free. Mike's top 300 list. So we got him up to 300 from not 1, not 2. We thought it was going to be not 3, not 4. We landed on 300, which is a nice solid number. And all of that is over at drrodo.com. Last but certainly not least, last in the intros, but first in your hearts, you can find him on those Twitter streets at FantasyNav. Normally Eric the Blue. Tonight, he's just the Baron of Bread. Eric Romoff, what's happening?
Man, the portal sort of closes today. It's kind of like the trade deadline in baseball, right? Like you can still find guys popping up afterwards. But I think the thing that we need to underscore first and foremost, Mike says he's done at 300. It doesn't mean you have to stop pressuring him to go further, right? If nothing else, he loves to hear it, and he's pretty open to suggestion. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. Like you talked about off the top, Jay, we're going to hear from our interview with Coach Mark Pope in a little bit, but we've also got some news items from around the league. Last show, we talked about Bob Huggins making his insensitive, inappropriate, outright wrong comments on a radio show. That punishment has since dropped, and it is a proverbial slap on the hand. $1 million salary reduction, 3-game suspension, and a quick trip to some sensitivity training. So, by and large, Bob Huggins is probably going to come out of this generally unscathed. He'll certainly be able to prowl the sidelines and coach up that transfer class that he secured this offseason. So, a little bit disappointing, but I'm glad it is something as opposed to nothing. And then on a lighter note, the Diamond Head Classic was announced today. It's 8 teams. This is a super fun tournament. It is right around Christmas time, December 21st through 24th in Hawaii. And this field is actually pretty stacked. Obviously, the host university is Hawaii. We've also got 3 teams that made the NCAA tournament last year. The entire field, Georgia Tech, Nevada, Old Dominion, St. Mary's, Temple, TCU, UMass, and again, host Miami. So always a fun tournament. And if nothing else, it is great for some late night sweat. So make sure that you save that one on the calendar. And it's exciting to see that released today.
Host Hawaii. Miami wishes they were going to that one. Hawaii is the host there, obviously, out there. You know what, guys? The Huggins thing, they also adjusted his contract a little bit, where I believe it's a year-to-year gimmick now as opposed to that long-term thing that he had. But like you said, at least something was done there, and hopefully they can make that right out there in Morgantown. All right, what you've all been waiting for. This was a great interview. We had a great time today with Coach Pope, and he was generous enough to give us a lot of his time on the day that the portal's closing. A lot of stuff going on in college basketball. We had to reschedule with him a couple of times, but it couldn't have turned out any better. So without further ado, here is our talk from earlier today with BYU Cougar head coach Mark Pope.
It's my honor to introduce our guest today, entering his fifth season as the head coach of the BYU Cougars, carrying an 87-41 record during his time in Provo. We're thrilled to welcome head coach Mark Pope. Coach, how are you?
So good, guys. Happy to be on.
Coach, we're thrilled to have you on, and kind of taking a look backwards at last year. You won 19 games. You had some really solid wins on your resume. So want to get your point of view fresh off of the season. How would you evaluate the team's performance overall, and what are some things that you're going to take away from last year into this coming season?
Yeah, I mean, every day that we get farther from the season, I get more and more proud of what these guys accomplished. I really am. Expectations are really high, and I'm really proud of. I think we've set expectations really high, and so certainly we didn't kind of meet the standard we've set in our first 3 years here last year, but all of that was done pretty intentionally. We knew we were making this transition to the Big 12. We knew that, even though we'd been ranked in the top 25 my first 3 years here, we felt like we weren't really even close. We felt like we were still so far away from making deep runs in the tournament. And so we knew that we kind of needed to make some kind of overhaul success, right? And that's really scary to do, man, when things are going good, and it takes some stupidity and a lot of cojones to overhaul success. But we were determined to try, and so we put together a new young roster that we felt like, even in this day and age of NIL and transfer portal, that we could keep together and grow for a few years and have a chance to become something really, really special. And I think I would grade us out really well in a bunch of respects. I think this roster staying together, which is obviously primarily of huge importance. I think we've added some really important pieces through the portal. I think my young guys got unbelievable experience last year. Just a couple last second shots against us away from being a 21, 22, 23 win team season, where we have a legitimate chance at being a postseason team with these freshmen and sophomores. And, going into some games really underhanded and guys stepping up and making plays. And most exciting for us was the growth we saw from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. Guys understanding concepts, guys being more comfortable on the floor, guys fitting in together and finding out how to work together. And so all of that leaves us incredibly optimistic about this project. Nobody in college basketball undertakes a 2 and 3 and 4 year project anymore, because you can't, but we're just dumb enough to think you can. And so we're going to try and do it.
Love it, Coach. I'm going to take a step back a little bit farther and sort of ask you about your playing days. You were a captain of that 96 Kentucky team that won the national championship, that some consider to be the best Wildcat team of all time, that Coach Pitino dubbed the Untouchables, right? What did you learn as a player during that title run, and what are some of the things that you observed from Coach Pitino that now you try to apply in your time as a head coach?
Well, I mean, we learned so much. My goodness, like what an experience that was. My whole tenure at Kentucky was just incredible. But if I was going to boil Coach Pitino down to one thing, which you can't, he's one of the winningest. I mean, he wins everywhere, guys. Like, he wins everywhere. He went to Greece and won his first year. Took over a team, flailing team halfway through the season and won. Like, this guy's incredible. But if I took one thing away from Coach P, it is just he has this this undaunted relentlessness, and I started putting those two words together as I try and understand who he is better. So clearly he's relentless. Like he will run through brick wall after brick wall after brick wall. Like nothing is going to stop him. Nothing's going to slow him down. Nothing is going to dim his energy. I have never seen him have a day where he didn't have unbelievable energy and intensity ever. He never turns it off and he never takes a break. He's just wired that way. It's just his DNA. And I like to add the undaunted part because he's also worked his way through so many. I mean, how many times has he been given himself the opportunity to be totally derailed? And he just won't. He just won't. He's just going to keep going. He's undaunted by the moment, always. Good, bad, ugly, victory, failure, misstep, or leadership. Like he's completely undaunted, and we certainly felt that every single day when we were playing for him. But as you know, so many of us from that team are going through our own coaching journeys right now, and I think every day I understand who he is a little bit better and understand, you know, what makes him so great a little bit better as we kind of see the challenges you face as a coach.
Well, Coach, let's talk a little bit about your coaching journey. I mean, last year marked the 4th straight year that your defense finished in the top 70 in adjusted efficiency. So how do you motivate and hold players accountable for defensive effort and execution of the court?
Well, if we don't guard, we yell at the guys and then we bench them. It's like it's a revolutionary coaching philosophy. One of the things that we're good at is being really simple. We don't change a lot of things. I do believe that there's so much slippage in games that one of our primary jobs as coaches is to take just so much data and so much information and distill it down into something that's reproducible by players over and over and over again, even though they're taking a barrage of input during the game. So we keep things pretty consistent, pretty simple. Sometimes as coaches, we out-coach our own team. And I know watching games, all of us sometimes are like, why do they make this adjustment or that adjustment or whatever adjustment? Because you just get tricked into like over coaching the game. And what you see is as you make those adjustments, you have all kind of unintended consequences that spring up. It seems like the adjustment is simple and makes sense, but then you have all the unintended consequences that come with it. And so I would say that's it. We kind of have a fundamental approach to guarding. We certainly are evolving. We changed a lot of things over the last course of our last 4 years, but we keep it pretty manageable in terms of the approach. And I think our guys are able to then go spend most of their effort performing rather than trying to remember what the most recent change or alteration was to what we do.
Being joined today by BYU men's basketball head coach Mark Pope. Coach Pope, you talked about the approach that you take to coaching your team. I want to ask you about the approach that you've taken to the transfer portal and NIL. This is obviously a brand new landscape in college athletics. What have the biggest challenges been for you so far, and how have you approached this as the coach?
Well, I think the beautiful thing about all these changes is that we're all learning on the fly, right? I have a dear friend who's a really successful leader in the business world. We got a lot of those out here in Utah right now. Go figure. It's unbelievable, this tech sector, how it's growing here. But he always gives this analogy of the way it works in tech is that, you put the engines on full throttle and you're in an airplane racing down the runway about to take off as you're finishing putting the wings together. And you're just hoping you get them done by the time you reach the end of the runway. And that's kind of how it is, right? And that's how it feels with the transfer portal. That's how it feels with NIL is we're making this up on the fly and trying to do it as fast as we can. And if you take out, some of us get lost. Some of us get lost in the argument about what's, is NIL a good thing or a bad thing? Or is the portal a good thing or a bad thing? And, what are the kids winning or losing from the NIL? What do we lose out on, from the transfer portal? and all of that is a little bit wasted energy, guys, because it's here. Like it's going to change every day. But it's not, unfortunately for us, we're not the deciders. We talk to our players every single day about like control what you can control, focus all your energy on what you can control. Don't waste any energy worrying about things you can't control. And the truth is, I don't get to be the decider if NIL comes or goes or transfer portal changes or stays the same. So what we're going to do is focus on our controllables. And if you narrow your scope of thinking to there, man, this is exciting and fun. Like, what an incredible challenge for us to figure this out in real time, right? And so that's the first thing we talk to ourselves about over and over and over again is like, hey, guys, embrace it. This is what it is. This is what we have as coaches, right? And so we got to figure it out. And so I think about both of these areas, transfer portal and NIL, as this unexplored opportunity that's incredibly exciting and really, really important that you find ways to manage, right? There's so many dynamics that come into play, and it all happens now in such a concentrated time. Like, you guys, everyone around the country seeing this is like, you have your first recruiting conversation on day one, maybe day three, and this is legit. This is not a stretch. Maybe day three, the family's here on official visit, and day five, like, they're making a decision. It's like speed dating at its finest.
Man, it is a whirlwind for us to just cover the transfer portal market. I can only imagine having to build a roster around it. You mentioned earlier, Coach, that a lot of what you did last year was building around some younger guys that you felt like you can retain. Obviously, as we sit here on May 11th, rosters are still somewhat in flux, but of the guys that you have returning for next year or expect to return for next year, what are some of the things that excite you most about that returning roster?
Well, I think what excites me the most is these guys are so young and they got so much experience last year. So, I have this sophomore class from last year that has a chance to be a really special junior class in Atiki and Foose and Jackson Robinson and Trey Stewart and even Nolan Waterman has a chance to be in a junior. Trevin Nell, we're getting back off the IR from last year. So we have this really, really, really strong, explosive junior class. And then I got this freshman that have really had a chance to grow, namely Dallin Hall and Richie Saunders got a ton of incredibly valuable experience. They were probably, in our final game against St. Mary's, we're trying to, we kind of had a disastrous first half, and a credit to them, obviously. But as we try to claw ourselves back in a really special way in the second half, those two freshmen were the guys leading the charge. And so, that nucleus, I think, is really, really exciting for us. And I think that's a group that's going to continue to grow together over the next couple of years. And that's what we need. Like, we're going to get to a point where we are a veteran, steeled, experienced group that trusts each other and knows each other and loves each other. And that's probably what it takes to compete at the Big 12. And we're counting on that all as the core of who we are rolling into this Big 12.
Well, Coach Pope, you're mentioning the Big 12. Some consider that to be the toughest conference in the country. What do you think would be the biggest adjustments as you move from the WCC?
Well, Mike, I would argue with that. I think everybody considers that the toughest league. The only people that don't consider that the toughest league in the country are the commissioners of the other leagues in the country when they're in front of the media. When they're at home at night, kicking back, they're like, my gosh, this Big 12 is ridiculous. I'm glad I'm not in it, right? This is a massive adjustment for us. There's no doubt about it, right? It was actually really surprising to me. This will be a little bit for you guys. This will be a little tidbit you can hold on to. I was actually really surprised as we've gone through the portal this spring. I ran into more than one player that we talked to as recruits that was actually scared of the Big 12. I was surprised by that.
Ooh.
That is one thing I did not anticipate, actually. It makes sense. I get it. But I had more than one guy that, maybe wouldn't say exactly those words, but kind of at the end of the day, it's like, I don't know, man, the Big 12, I'm not sure if I'm gonna be do what I want to be able to do in the Big 12. And so, that was super humbling as we walk in this league. I actually never had that conversation in WCC. And the WCC is a great basketball league, mind you. I mean, it's Hall of Fame coaches up and down that league. And, interestingly, over the last 3 or 4 years, it was actually harder to win the WCC tournament than it was to win the Big 12 tournament because we had the number 1 ranked team in the country in the WCC. So it's not like the WCC is any slouch of a league. But the depth of this league in the Big 12 right now is just disgusting. Like, it is awesome, guys. It's like, I said this a bunch of times. You could have a great basketball team. You could have a top 30 basketball team and go 3-15 in this Big 12. It's terrifying, man. But
yeah, it's tough. It's tough. Yeah.
As an athlete, as a coach, I don't know what, like, if your life is not about going and facing the best competition you possibly can, like, why are you even in the sport? It doesn't make sense to me. Like, I don't even understand any of that. So, like, we're out of our minds excited. We're incredibly humble about this, guys. We get it. Like, we know what we're walking into. We have a sense of, like, how hard this is. But there's also incredible opportunity. In the Big 12, you could be 7-11 and be a 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. Think about that. So it's awesome. We can't wait to get to it. And we say that with the utmost humility and respect for what this league is.
Coach Marpo of the BYU Cougars joining us here on One and Done. Coach, you're talking about the Big 12, the teams, how tough it is to play night in and out. There's some great places to play in this conference as well. The Moody Center here in Austin, brand new arena. It's like you're on top of the court now, and it's super loud, and there's a lot of great places to play. BYU obviously plays their home games at the Marriott Center. What is that like? It feels like it would be a blast to coach there. How important is it to have the community student section bought in? And then to tack something onto the end of that, the elevation, the advantage of playing at a higher elevation too. I used to sit at home and watch Rockets games in the 90s and hate when the Rockets used to have to travel up to Utah because I always knew that was going to get at them. So a couple of parts there to that question, but just what's it like coaching at the Marriott Center with the community and the student section behind you? And then obviously, do you feel like teams feel that disadvantage coming to play you at that higher elevation?
Yeah. So the venues in this league are super special, aren't they? I mean, you talk about and it's the whole league. Talk about Morgantown, and you talk about Hilton Coliseum, and obviously Texas Tech and Texas, and I mean, how many schools I just listed? I didn't even get to Fog Allen yet. Like, what are we talking about here, right? And we played at Houston my first year in a barn burn. It was we won on a last second shot, and that's a great environment. Like, that's a great college environment. And obviously what Kelvin's doing down there is incredible. But this Marriott Center is special, guys. Cannot for all 3 of you to get out here for a game. Like, it's gonna blow your mind. Like, it is our fan base is like nowhere else. Our student section, I mean, they'll roll in there 7,000-8,000 strong. It's the entire baseline, and it's sheer insanity, right? You think about we're a top. I think this year we're a top 15 attendance in the country. I think almost at 16,000 a game, and all due respect to these great teams, but that's San Diego and Portland walking in here. Wait till Kansas, Texas, Oklahoma, Texas Tech, West Virginia go down the list are walking in here. Like, our fans are losing their minds right now. And then in terms of this elevation, I have this. Oh my gosh. This elevation is there's real health concerns with competing this elevation, and we are encouraging all opposing players to seriously consider opting out of the game if they don't feel like they can withstand the elevation, man. We will we make sure that there's oxygen in the visiting locker room for these guys, but it can be dangerous. So anybody that doesn't feel like they're tip-top shape, take a breath, take a night off, let's go.
Love
Hey,
it.
Coach, we're excited to get out there. Hopefully, here in the next few years, we'll be able to get out there for a game. But what's the best part about being the head coach of BYU basketball?
Yeah, that's hard. Like, I'm blessed. This is an incredible job. I mean, this is an incredible job. When you start with our fan base, it just is. It's unbelievable. And what's really fun and going to be fun for us in the Big 12 is our fan base is nationwide. Everywhere we go, there's homegrown. Just because of the affiliation with the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, there's homegrown fans. We go everywhere. Like, I kid you not, we're gonna roll into Morgantown, and there's gonna be like several hundred fans that show up to the game that are like decked out and blew away. It's not because they travel, it's because they live in West Virginia. And that's a universal experience for us. I talked about going to play at Houston. I know they're joining the Big 12 with us, but we went and played there 4 years ago, and you walk in and that gym sold out every single night. You can't buy a ticket, and you walk into the gym, and from courtside all the way up to the top of the section, there's 2 full sections that are decked out in blue and white. I don't know how those people get the tickets, but they didn't travel. They just live in Houston. And so this fan base is really special. It's incredible to be able to coach at a place where people care so much. And then for me, like, it's just, this university is a special place, man. Like, the kids that come here, the players that come here, they actually have a sense that there's something more important in the world than themselves. And I know that sounds trite, but that's actually becoming really, really rare in this world. And my locker room is full of guys that understand that there's something more important than themselves. This is a faithful institution. This is an institution sponsored by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. We're faithful believers in Jesus Christ. We're also really religiously diverse. Probably our best player last year is a devout Muslim who is one of the most beautiful human beings that I've ever met as a young person. But everybody in our locker room understands that there is something more important than themselves. And everybody on this campus understands that. And that makes it a really, really special community to be in, right? And so those two of the great reasons why it's super fun to coach here.
Absolutely. Ton of excitement around this program. Mark Pope, the head coach of the BYU Cougars, been making some waves there in 4 seasons in the WCC. Now you've accepted the challenge. You're jumping up to the high majors and to the Big 12. And I think this program is well positioned to answer that call. A lot of that has to do with the leadership and the direction of Mark Pope. Coach Pope, really appreciate you spending some time with us this afternoon.
Hey, you guys are awesome, man. Seriously, you got a permanent invite to come out here. You got to come catch a game, boys.
All right, my guys. Looks like we're planning on a trip to Utah, huh?
Provo, Utah.
Yeah, no doubt about it. What a great talk that was with Coach Pope. Thanks for Tyson Jex over there on campus, the director of communications, getting us hooked up there with Coach Pope. And of course, thank you to Coach Mark Pope for his time today. It was super awesome to get to talk to him. Mike, real quick, any takeaways from that interview?
Yeah, just the excitement he has for his program, what he's building, the move to the Big 12s. I mean, sounds super excited to take on the challenge. Kind of funny mentioning the unnamed players that don't want to play in the Big 12 because it's an absolute grindhouse. So, yeah, just hearing his voice inflection, how excited he really is to take this BYU program into the Big 12. Eric?
Man, there are so many things that I took away from that. First, I don't know if I've seen either of you smile bigger than when we heard about recruits being afraid to jump into the Big 12 waters. But I mean, look, he talked about what he took away from Coach Pitino and how Coach P is a guy that always brings the energy and the urgency. Coach Pope showed us that. He's super excited about what they're building there at BYU. He talked about how this team has a ton of guys that got a bunch of run as freshmen and now the majority of them are returning, right? So not only are they a year older, but they've got really good experience. It feels like there's a strong foundation around this roster. And also, it was kind of tongue in cheek. Because one of my favorite quotes when we were asking about defense, he said, "We yell at them if they don't guard, and then we bench them," right? And I think there's a natural knack to assume that it's rocket surgery that these top line coaches are doing, but there are fundamental things that are universal, right? And I think he's done a really good job of bringing an open mind and a fresh perspective, but also sticking to those things that are time tested. So the BYU program is one on the rise, and like I said to close, I think that Mark Pope has a lot to do with that.
Those young players getting a ton of run last season is just going to do nothing but help these tough environments that this Cougar team is going to play in on a night in and night out basis. It's almost like they were planning on that, planning ahead. It's what good coaches do. They were getting these young guys some run in anticipation of this move to the Big 12, and could pay some dividends there for the Cougars. So thanks again to Mark Pope and everybody over there at BYU. We will be making a trip out to Provo. Faux show. You guys are new to One and Done. Make sure you hit those like and subscribe buttons. Turn on that notification bell so you don't miss anything that we're doing. More coaches interviews, more portal breakdowns, more roster building, all the stuff that we're going to bring to you all off season long. Make sure you do your part in the Green Screens Media universe. Hit that subscribe button. Also, if you're here, leave us a comment. Let us know what you thought about our talk with Coach Pope, and maybe anybody else you'd like to see us talk to down the line. We're making our way sort of from the West Coast across the country there. We're making our way. Might have some names in Middle America popping up here shortly. Be on the lookout for that. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel. And don't forget, we're over on Twitter as well at One and Done CBB. One and Done, all spelled out right there. Scrolling across the bottom like clockwork at One and Done CBB. Also, make sure you follow that at Get Green Screens for everything else that we're doing at Green Screens Media. Next segment here, moving on from that awesome interview with Coach Pope. Going to move on now to 5 new portal entrants. We were hinting at it earlier. May 11th is the deadline. There's going to be some slow paperwork to go through, some grad transfers and stuff. So it's not completely done yet, but we got a pretty good idea of who will be in the portal moving forward. 5 new entrants here. All of them actually fall within the top 100 of the big board, not the expanded 300 as we, sort of tugged Mike along to get to. But Mike, why don't you start us off with the player that falls right at fresh 100 on the big board?
Yeah, we'll talk about it. Ernest Udeh Jr., the big man from Kansas. And stop if you've heard this before, former 5-star McDonald's All-American in the portal, a 6'11", 250, just didn't get a ton of run. Obviously, the news of Hunter Dickinson joining Kansas, Udeh looking for some playing time elsewhere. Awesome size, awesome potential. We've seen plenty of these 5-star guys, jump into the portal and try to find a better situation, especially from that class from last year. So, Ernest Udeh jumping in as number 100 on our top of 300 big board.
Move up a few slots here to number 94. Eric, tell us about a former Auburn forward jumping in that portal.
Yeah, that's Alan Flanigan, 6'6", 220 pounds, nice kind of swingman type of player. Played 34 games last year, just over 10 points, right at 5 boards per game. So, feels like he can contribute in a few different ways. And this is one where, maybe you don't pull out the tinfoil hat, but there's some ties that bind with this move, right? His father was an assistant there at Auburn. Wes has now moved over to Ole Miss, so not entirely surprising that we see Alan Flanigan jump into the portal. And at least it would seem logically that Ole Miss is probably going to be on the short list of places that he's going to consider for where he'll want to go. And whether it's Ole Miss or otherwise, they're looking at a player that's a nice athletic wing. He's got good experience at the collegiate level. He's played over 100 games, so definitely feels like he can carve out a nice role wherever it lands. But seems like Ole Miss is at least the favorite in the clubhouse.
A lot of the coaches that we've talked to have stressed the importance of being older, getting older, whether that's on your own roster or through the portal. And Flanigan would be a nice get for anybody looking to solidify that. And, of course, Ole Miss, Chris Beard has gotten everybody else under the sun, so why not a guy that averaged, 10-5 in the SEC? Why not? Moving on now, Mike, let's go to number 41 on the big board. A big jump here in the big board with Andrew Taylor.
Yeah, Andrew Taylor. This one popped up a couple of days ago, and this is a big name, and you got a ton of teams after this guy. Look, he's 6'3", 185 pounds, averaged 20 points, almost 5 rebounds, and 5 assists per game. Super active, can create. He's an elite scorer. He's first team All Sun Belt. Really, really nice player. And, he's going to have, obviously, no shortage of suitors. I mean, his game's going to translate no matter where he goes. I'm just excited to see him potentially, take a step up and be on TV a little bit more. And we'll be able to kind of see him do his thing and see if his game translates, which I believe it will.
Mike, before I hop in here and take Julian Phillips, you talked about Taylor's game sort of translating easily no matter where he goes. When you're compiling this big board, is that something that you take into consideration, like the flexibility to, on where they could land because they're just sort of that Swiss Army knife and their game can really play anywhere?
Yeah, you look at, versatility with the player. If he's able to create for others, obviously at the guard position, that's an added bonus. This is a guy that scored 20 points per game at the collegiate level in the Sun Belt, which, as a mid-major was one of the top mid-majors out there, according to KenPom. And, we watched that league. I mean, there were 5 or 6 teams battling it out there to grab that conference title bid. And, so I think that this kid's game's going to translate. It's got good size. And anytime you're an elite scorer and creator, you feel like that translates to anywhere you go.
Yeah, absolutely. No doubt about it. All right. For me, I'm going to hop in here and take Julian Phillips here, formerly of the Tennessee Volunteers, 6'8", 200-pound forward. In 32 games played last year, averaged 8.3 points, 4.7 boards, and 1.4 assists. This is sort of that last-minute addition. Not really sure if he was somebody that originally we thought would hop in, but here he is, and he's really high on the big board as well. And like we like to say here, stop me if you heard it before, another former 5-star McDonald's All-American in the portal. We're going to go back and look at how many of these McDonald's All-Americans ended up switching teams this year, and I think it'll be over a dozen, where we just kept saying it show after show, night after night. Phillips really showed flashes at different points throughout the year. Tennessee, obviously, we've joked that Rick Barnes likes to play first to 50 type basketball, and on some nights it's not really a joke. So it's hard to take 8.3 points per game and just you got to take that with a grain of salt, because Phillips is absolutely an elite athlete, and somebody is going to get themselves a gem here, because you look at those stat lines and it's like, this is 8.5, 4.5, and 1.5 dimes, okay, like that doesn't jump off the page, but that's you get more than that with Phillips. You get the athleticism, you get the pedigree, the 5-star McDonald's All-American that he is, and somebody's going to get a gem in Phillips here. Looking forward to seeing where he lands. Mike, round us out here on our 5 entrants tonight with the number 17 player on the big board.
Yeah, a little surprise here last minute. Arthur Kaluma of Creighton in the portal, 6'7", 225. We've talked a bunch about him throughout the year. Creighton was almost the Final Four team, given that foul at the end of the game with San Diego State. But yeah, we know Kaluma from the past few years. Part of that really good class they had a couple of years ago that saw Nimhart head out to Gonzaga, and now Kaluma probably wanting to stay in the draft. Obviously, going to the combine. He has NBA athleticism. If he stays in college, he's obviously going to be a high impact player no matter where he goes. So I think obviously his plans are to focus on the NBA draft. If he does come back, though, it looks like he'll be moving on from Creighton.
Probably one of the more surprising names just in general that we've seen enter this offseason. Udeh, Flanigan, Taylor, Phillips, Kaluma, those are your 5 players to recently enter the portal. And like I said, they all happen to fall in the top 100 on our big board, which has 300 players in it. Thanks to Mike and thanks to you in the comments making sure we pushed him to get there. Loving every bit of that. And like I've said before, make sure you get over to drroto.com and check out Mike's big board and all the work that he does over there for college basketball. If you don't, you are missing out. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. Be sure to leave us a comment. Let us know you're here. Let us know what you think about those players that have entered the portal. Were you surprised Kaluma hopped in? We were absolutely surprised that he hopped in there. Any other surprises that maybe we left out that you want to leave us a comment about? Go ahead and do that. Smash those like and subscribe buttons. Do your thing. We appreciate everybody hanging out with us tonight. I just can't get over Coach Pope, man. Like,
Yeah.
what a guy. What a dude, man.
Yeah,
that was such a fun talk. Gonna be thinking about that one for a while for sure. Hit those 5 portal entrants, and now, as I mentioned before, we have decided to mix it up a little bit here on One and Done and try some new segments tonight. We're going to do a little rapid fire portal edition. Oh, we got the new scroll. Yeah, we got
give it a slam dunk over there, Jay. You're up there by the hoop.
He's open.
He's open. Well, I'll try not to rip it down like Shaq. I'll try not to do that. Don't know if that'll mess up our graphic there. Either way, a little bit of rapid fire tonight, portal edition. Let's go ahead and start with question 1. Gentlemen, over 1,700, just like Mike said, we'd get to 1,700. Over 1,700 Division I college basketball players have entered the transfer portal, 300 of which are ranked by Mike over at drroto.com, of course. Mike, kick us off by telling us which big-time star is going to have to carry the most weight for their new team.
Well, it felt like we got to 25 to 30 stars by the time this thing ended, but looking at the top 10 that's on our board, I have to say Caleb Love going to Michigan. Look, you got 1 star headed out, the number 1 guy on our board, Hunter Dickinson, no longer going to be at Michigan. Caleb Love coming in there should get a ton of shots. Michigan also lost Jett Howard, Kobe Buffkin, who are in the NBA draft. And look, really Love is going to be able to do what he wants on this roster. I mean, he's the only guy that's averaged double digits in the college ranks that's currently on the roster. So, yeah, I think he's going to be super important to Michigan's Big Ten chances. So, yeah, Caleb Love for me.
So much usage. Eric, who do you got here?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with some home cooking, and that's your guy, Max Abmas. Obviously we've talked ad nauseum about how much turnover there's been on this Longhorn roster. They lost a ton of guys from that Elite 8 team last year. They had both of their five-star commits decommit. So, that leaves a huge hole. And Max Abmas steps right in and fills that pretty well, right? He profiles pretty similarly to a guy that you guys lost in Marcus Carr. And, it's hard to find guys in the portal that are averaging north of 20 points per game. And, it feels like, credit to Coach Terry for getting the bag, but he really shifted all of his focus to acquiring Max Abmas. He managed to pull it off, and now he's got to come in and carry a huge load for this team, right? You got guys like Hunter and Mitchell that are still in the draft process, but to varying degrees, largely expected back. But I'm expecting it to be the Max Abmas show in Austin for the majority of next season.
I think Coach Terry is too, if we're being quite honest, and Of course we are. I like Jalen Cook to be a huge part of the LSU rebuild in year 2 for Coach McMahon. Kid was an absolute stud at Tulane, and I expect Cook to play such an absolutely monster role there in LSU. All right, question 2. With as many players in the portal as we've seen, it's easy to focus on the big names and lose sight of some of those players a little bit farther down the big board. With that being said, what has been the best portal acquisition that no one is talking about? Mike?
Yeah, I'll go with a pitch. Pitt's getting Ishmael Leggett from Rhode Island. This is a quality get for a Pitt team that surpassed expectations last year, right? Got into the NCAA tournament, and now this offseason is huge for Coach Capel. I mean, lose your starting backcourt. Even Sabandi's gone. That microwave off the bench, and Leggett's going to have to carry a large load here. He averaged 16 points per game at Rhode Island, and you're trying to build off of last year's momentum It feels like Leggett is going to have to be a huge part of this. So, I think no one's really talking about him. I think he could be a really good player in the ACC.
Eric, what you got?
Yeah, I'm going to go over to Evan Taylor from Lehigh. He's heading over to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt is another one of these programs that saw one of these mass exodus type of movements, right? They just lost a ton of guys, and Taylor comes in as a really versatile player, right? He's a big kind of guard combo wing, 6'6", 200 pounds. Last year, averaged over 14 points, 6.5 boards, handed out a dime per game as well. So can do a lot of different things on the court. And, part of that sort of Cinderella run for Jerry Stackhouse to make the tournament push last year was him, maximizing the ability of the guys that he has on the court. So, I like Taylor to continue to develop this year and to take another step forward. And he's going to be a key piece in this offense.
Vanderbilt had that exodus movement of job people. Oh, yeah. It's going to be tough, but Stackhouse can get the most out of it, like you said. I can't figure out why there isn't as much buzz for Iona big man Nelly Jr. Joseph linking up with Mashburn House over in New Mexico with the Lobos. I cannot figure out why nobody is talking about him, especially because he's in that all-world name category. Love me some Nelly Jr. Joseph.
You love that all-world name category, man.
I love it. But his game speaks for itself too, and I think more people should be talking about Nelly Jr. Joseph in that regard. Question 3. By my count, gentlemen, my brothers in basketball, there will be 58 new head coaches in college basketball at the start of the 2023-2024 season. Which newly hired head coach has had the biggest impact in the portal? Mike, and then straight to Eric.
I think you'll like this one, Jay. I got to go with Mark Madsen. If you can give me the dance while there we go. Over at Cal, from Utah Valley, replacing Mark Fox, who struggled. I think Stanford's got to be kicking themselves, right? The alumnus going over to Cal. Man, he's bringing in so much talent. Fardaws Amack and Jalen Tyson coming in from a really good Texas Tech team. Wow, like you get a natural scorer and a stretch 2-man in Jalen Cone. We know he can fill it up, formerly of Virginia Tech, coming over from Northern Arizona. And then you've got other pieces coming in too. Keontae Kennedy, Jay, one of your favorites. Mike Meadows from Portland. Man, these are just experienced guys. And all of a sudden, Cal's, their roster, you look at it up and down and looking like a top half of the Pac-12 type team. So I got to give it to Madsen. We got to see it on the court. It's got to make all these pieces fit. But I think he's done an excellent job, and what a hire by Cal.
Oh, Mike, you took mine. I feel like Madsen is a really good call there. And peeking behind the curtain in our pre-show text thread, we're constantly talking about Cal and USC just trading blows on acquiring players left and right. So definitely should be positioned to take a jump forward this year. Looking across the rest of the landscape, I could twist the knife with Chris Beard a little bit, but I'll be nice and I'll go with Mike Rhoades. He's heading up to Penn State, replacing Micah Shrewsbury. And don't look now. I mean, we profiled this Nittany Lion class a few nights ago, and he continues to add. He now has 7 players inside of Mike's top 300 big board. So definitely overhauling this roster. This is a class that is headlined by Ace Baldwin, a player that comes over with him, an A10 player of the year. And that new player that he added was Raquandris Mitchell from Kansas City, one of Mike's favorite microwave scorers, right? Guy that can heat up in a flash. So, just we detailed this class, so we're not going to go back over the entirety of it, but every single guy brings something different, right? Puff Johnson is that upside guy. You've got a bunch of versatility. You've got guys like Ace Baldwin that are familiar with the system. Obviously Shrewsbury heading out the door is going to be a little bit of a gut punch for Penn State, but real quick, Coach Rhoades has this program looking like they've got some real punching power in the conference.
No doubt about it. Speaking of punching power, to the surprise of no one, Rick Pitino is just going about his business and grabbing some nice pieces at St. John's, and we've talked about it. It's one of those things. Or Chris Beard grabs somebody else. Oh, shocking. Rick Pitino grabbed somebody else. You mentioned Beard earlier, Eric, and I think that we could have easily mentioned Beard in this segment as well. But, again, Pitino doing Pitino things, obviously, right? That's what he does.
Hey, man, he can win in Greece. Like, you think
Wins
he's going to win it?
everywhere.
You think he's going to win at St. John's?
Exactly. Shout out to Coach Pope for that awesome quote that we got out of him there about Coach Pitino. Question 4 now, gentlemen. The commitments of a few transfers have raised some eyebrows with this here on One and Done. On the other side of that coin, what transfer and new team just makes the most sense for you, Mike?
Hunter Dickinson, like, as crazy and drawn out and whatever was going on with that whole thing, milking it for what it was worth. Him going to Kansas, that's a natural fit. I mean, Coach Bill Self, he has a history of dominant big men, right? Azubuike, McCormick, Embiid, Lawson, Simeon. Like, there's the list just absolutely just goes on and on. Kansas trying to play KJ Adams at the 5 didn't really feel like Bill Self's style, right? KJ Adams more of a 3-4 wing type player. Can maybe come off the bench now or be an energy guy. We'll have to see. But Hunter Dickinson in Kansas, that's going to be an absolute force. Eric, who do you got?
Yeah, I'm going to go to Matthew Cleveland and Miami. We've talked a lot this offseason about how coaches are able to go out and pick and choose exactly what they need. And Matthew Cleveland profiles a lot like Jordan Miller, who's heading out the door, right? He's should be able to slot right into that versatile 4 spot that Larrañaga likes to use. It really just feels like a match made in heaven, right? He's got some handles, he can spread the floor, and our favorite tagline for Miami: more guards than Shawshank, right? We know they like to play with 4 guards, and that gives them a lot of versatility, and that seems like a style that really fits what Cleveland does well. So, they were a little late in the game in terms of making a big splash, but they made it count. And they got a great one in terms of fit and upside with Matt Cleveland.
And not having to get the movers to take that guy very far, obviously, moving from Florida State right down the road to Miami. I'm going to just drop a name in here real quick. Jamarion Sharp announced he's coming back to college basketball and is headed to Ole Miss. We know Chris Beard loves that defense. Sharp is the top shot blocker in the country. Love that fit there for Coach Beard and Ole Miss. Question 5, before we get on out of here, gentlemen. The portal giveth and the portal taketh away. What is one program that you feel really addressed its greatest areas of need, of opportunity, glaring necessity, however you want to describe it? Give me a program that did the best job of that.
Yeah, might be a little bit of a hot take, but I don't know. I mean, Wake Forest, look at their year last year, really the last couple of years, great offensively. This year you lose Tyree Appleby, who was one of our favorites to cover, Davian Williamson, kind of that microwave guy. Weren't great defensively, finished in the 130s in defensive efficiency, always one of our favorite words to say, 5 times fast. This is a defense that struggles to defend at the rim. I mean, they're 249th in block percentage, 220th in opponent 2-point percentage. So teams able to get easier buckets, kind of addressing both issues here. I mean, you go out and you get Kevin Miller from Central Michigan, who's an absolute dynamite scorer. We'll see if he can kind of replicate, the Appleby breakout, the Alondis Williams breakout from the year before that. Also, you pair him with Hunter Salas, who's a guy that we got to see in person for Gonzaga out there in the West Regional. And he's a former 5-star player. Didn't get too much run at Gonzaga, has a very strong defensive prowess. So those 2 guys really complement each other. And then really, you got to add some rim protection, right? Efton Reed from Gonzaga as well, another 5-star guy. The last couple of years just hasn't gotten a lot of run. I mean, that Gonzaga front court, we've talked about it before. It was loaded. He was at LSU for his freshman year. Played, I think, nearly 50% of the minutes there. He posted almost a 6% block rate. So this is a guy that could come in and, make some things happen. So I really like what Wake Forest is doing here. They've got some other pieces coming back too. Hildreth, Monsanto, Cars coming back. So really liking what this Wake Forest team is cooking up here. Eric, who do you got here for fit?
Man, I don't have to go far. I'm going to go with Coach Pope and BYU, right? And we were fortunate enough to be able to kind of hear some of his thought process and philosophy around roster building. But even just taking an objective look at it, I think he made a pretty sober analysis and identified a few areas within his team. They were 245th in 3-point percentage at just under 33% from range. They were 309th in turnover percentage, and those were the areas that he went out and addressed almost to a T, right? Very specifically. He's bringing in 3 guys that should help boost this offense. This was an offense that was just outside of the top 100 in offensive efficiency. We talked about them coming in the 70s in defensive efficiency. And these guys, right? Quez Glover, Dawson Baker, Ali Khalifa, they're all kind of ticking those boxes, right? All 3 of them are under 20% turnover last year, so we should see some lift in that category. Glover and Khalifa, 38% from range. Baker was right there with him, 37%. So should be able to fill it up a little bit more from distance. And now all of a sudden, yes, it's going to be a challenge. Yes, players are scared about jumping into the Big 12 waters. Coach Pope is not. And you look at this team, right? Strong defensively, and they can take care of the ball. They can fill it up a little bit more from downtown. And that's a brand of basketball that plays pretty well in the Big 12.
Not shocked at all that Coach Pope has done his homework and has got his team, lined up and ready to compete in this conference. I was talking to somebody earlier in the day on text, and they were thinking that BYU might struggle a bit in the Big 12, and I think BYU is going to hold their own just fine in this conference for sure. Before we get out of this segment, and I want to dunk one more time before we turn over this bracket, this graphic, I should say. There we go. It's not easy to replace a talent like Colin Castleton, and we've talked about it on this show before. Florida's found a couple of guys to try to, get in there and replace him in the production that he brought. But Florida's really upgraded their talent from top to bottom of their roster, and this is going to be a wide open SEC next year. So I think Florida is definitely somebody that we need to pay quite a bit of attention to. All right, that was rapid fire. One more dunk. Pow! Got it. Good deal.
I love that up there, man. You got up there high, too. My head was above the rim.
Yeah, well, I mean, you guys know the things that I'm capable of doing.
Elite athleticism.
The sheer athleticism jumps off the page. All the measurables are there. Y'all know the deal.
McDonald's 5-star American.
Stop me if you've heard this before. Yeah, exactly. Let's put a bow on this, baby. Mike, put a bow on it for the boys. And what'd you think about the show? And Kate, Mark Pope, what a guy, man. What a guy. Put a bow on it, Mike.
Yeah, I thought it was an awesome interview. Glad he spent 20, 25 minutes with us. It was awesome to hear his excitement once again. We talked about that earlier. And the portal's closing, which means I will go to sleep now. I guess Rothstein slept for the last 11 days. Not really. He's been tweeting nonstop too. So it's been fun. It's another portal season coming closer to a close. I would say it's 98% closed. It's been fun. Now we'll start to, preview conferences and what these rosters are going to look like, project them for betting purposes, DFS purposes, and just overall college basketball, talk. So I'm excited to do that as we kind of round out May heading into June and July. So excited about that. Eric, man, any takeaways from tonight?
Coach Pope, what a legend, right? And obviously, his reputation precedes him in a good way, and he lived up to that and then some. I am very optimistic about their ability to contend in the Big 12 in the very near term, and was really, really appreciative of Coach Pope's time and the insights that he shared. And Mike, like you mentioned, right, the portal is mostly closed, but that doesn't mean we're going anywhere, right? We're gonna keep pushing out this content. If you're not already, make sure you're subscribed here. Hit that like button to show Coach Pope a little bit of love, and make sure that notification bell is on. We are still interviewing coaches pretty much every week throughout the duration of the off season. It feels like going to start getting into some recruiting classes. So, now that we've got a little bit more clarity with how these rosters are going to start to shape up, we can really dive into how these teams will actually play together on the court. And I couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, I'm optimistic about one thing, and that's about the fact that we're probably going to make it out to Provo this season at some point. It might be happening a little bit cheaper than that Vegas trip we took to that West Regional, but that's something that I'm optimistic about. Thank you, Coach Pope, for your time. Thanks, everybody at BYU, for making that happen. Thank you, Eric. Thank you, Mike. Two of the best in the business. Eric Romoff at Fantasy Nav on those Twitter streets. Mike Holland at MC Holland 34. My name is Jay Heinrich, your humble conductor of the aforementioned Green Screens train at Dr. William Cannon on Twitter. You have been watching One and Done. Baby, don't you forget it. Hit those like and subscribe buttons. Have a nice day. Let's get this bread.
Thanks for stopping by the office. Get your fantasy prescription by subscribing to the channel and checking out drrodo.com. And until the next visit, be well and take care.